Hello and welcome to the Shotgun Sportsman, a podcast about handgun hunting brought to you by Handgun Hunters International. My name is Ryan Hoover and I'm your host. I believe handgun hunting is the most rewarding way to hunt, and it's something I want to share with as many people as I can. If you are at all interested in getting your own game meat, I want to challenge you to a way of hunting that is good for both your spirit and your body, so you can become the confident, self-reliant person you were meant to be. Hello again, handgun hunters, and welcome back to the Shotgun Sportsman. Today, I'm going to be talking again with Dick Thompson. We talked about some of his hunting experience. Of course, we can't not talk about guns a little bit, but he's had a lot of experience and done a lot of cool things and has a lot of advice to offer. We got into open sight shooting. He had a wild experience with a mountain lion, etc. But before we get into it, I want to tell you a quick story. The other day on the forum, the members forum on the Handgun Hunters International website, one of our members posted a picture of himself that I reposted to social media of a bear that he had shot with a Taurus revolver he won as an HHI from one of the HHI giveaways last year in 2022. And I just wanted to say that that is one of the major reasons that HHI invests in the handgun community through our giveaways, is the opportunity to share some handgun hunting equipment with our members so that they can be successful with it in the field. Sometimes it's been things where people never would have thought to buy them, or things that, maybe seem a little out of their price range, but we're giving it away and they're just so grateful. And I love seeing that kind of success. And that is why we do it. And that is why you should join Handgun Hunters International. All HHI members are automatically entered to win our giveaways. Our giveaways are always worth way more than membership costs because I love giving back to our community, and we're going to continue to do it. Our giveaways are not gimmicks, and I hope you'll consider joining HHI. Just go to handgunhuntersinternational.com and check us out, and you can contact me through that website if you have any other questions. Okay, now on to my conversation, part 2 with Dick Thompson. Dick Thompson, thanks for joining me again. You have the distinct honor of being the first person I've done a 2-part episode with.
Well, I'm honored.
Well, that's how much I enjoyed it. I mean, we could probably do a dozen, but I really enjoy talking to you. And in our last podcast, we talked about a few things, casting bullets, your friendship with Elmer Keith, a lot about guns, etc. And I realized that in order to fit in a lot of your hunting experience, we probably needed to do a part 2. So that's what I want to talk about today. Just as a recap, I know you spent a lot of time in Texas, and that's kind of where you got your love for the handgun hunting thing. You had some good mentors down here. But as far as hunting is concerned, what are some of the, starting from when you began, what are some of the more memorable hunts that you've had? And I know you've hunted a lot of places.
Well, talking about starting in Texas, from being there that all of that land is private, and I didn't get to hunt the first year I was there in '66. I didn't know anyone, and I did go down. I think one time we went down, 2 or 3 of us in my little Volkswagen, to Possum Kingdom, and we bow hunted. And that's about all we did in '66. And then as I started working in that Gibson's Discount Center, I started meeting guys, farmers and stuff would come in, and I hit up a friendship with a guy from Whitesboro and a guy named Dub Carney. And Dub would invite me out to his place, and I got hunting there, and Dub and his brother's name was Earl, but for some reason they called him Hoof, Hoof. And they had a lease down at Brownwood, and so in '67 I got to go down to Brownwood and hunt their lease, and they had a real good lease, a lot of turkeys and whitetails, and I'd always shoot a whitetail or 2. Yeah, at that time, a hunting license was $3.15, and there was 4 deer tags attached to that license.
Wow!
I don't know if it's still now or not. There was 2 on each end. And
we have, the Super Combo now licensed hunting and fishing is $68, and in my county we get 5 deer.
Oh, I see.
$2 and 3 does.
Okay. This was, I think this was 1 buck and 3 does, I think is what it was at the time. There was 2 tags on each end. It was $3.15.
Wow.
And like I say, I met him through the store, and he just took me in and just treated me just like one of his sons. He had a daughter and 2 sons, but he'd take me down to his lease, him and Hoof, and he had an old school bus converted into a camper, had 3 sets of bunk beds in there, and we just had a wonderful time. And would shoot deer and turkeys and just had it all to ourselves. And we did. I can't even describe how much fun we had down there. But that was my initiation into Texas hunting and whitetail and turkeys. And there weren't any hogs on there at the time. The hogs weren't as distributed at that time in different parts of Texas like they are now. I started out, I had a Remington 700 and a 6mm at first, and then I think the second year I went with dubs when I took my that 4-inch Smith & Wesson Model 57 41 mag and killed the whitetail with that. But I was still into rifles at the time, buying a few at the store when I could afford it. But at that time, those BDL Remingtons were $116.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me ask you, when your first big game with a handgun was a whitetail. Was there anything, because I like to ask this to people who have been doing it for a while, was there anything you remember specifically about that hunt, doing it the first time with a handgun, that sticks with you?
Well, it was almost like I don't know, like a little kid at Christmas. It just, every time you shoot something with a handgun, it kind of renews that interest in hunting. That, even if it's a doe, even if it's a small buck, that never has bothered me. I've never been someone that holds out for a really large animal, except for when I moose hunted. But it just, that thrill of taking something with a handgun never goes away. You just always have that. And that's from the first one I ever shot until the one that I shot last year. I just always had that same feeling. There's just something about taking something with a handgun, whether it's a single shot handgun, it doesn't make any difference. You do it with a handgun, it's an accomplishment. And to do it with, with a hand load, whether it be a jacketed bullet or a cast bullet, I tease people about that, but I'm always joking. It doesn't matter what you take. If it's with a handgun, deer, elk, or bear, or rabbit, doesn't matter.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's actually good to hear you saying that you have a few years on me, and to be able to look forward, because you're echoing a lot of sentiments that I've heard from other hunters, and to be able to look forward to many years of still getting that enjoyment when I hunt, because that's exactly what I've found is and you put it perfectly, every time it renews your love for hunting. It is a renewing experience every time. So moving on, after you got out of the military, you moved back to Idaho, correct?
Yes.
And so what was it like getting into the sport up there?
Well, here it's so different because I've always lived in country here in Idaho where it's I don't know what the percentage is, but a huge percentage of Idaho is public land. You can go anywhere, and within just a matter of minutes, you can be hunting public land, and you never know. It can be deer, elk, bear, mountain lion. Go a little bit north of here, and you're hunting antelope. We have a lot of moose, a tremendous amount of moose just to the east of where I live between here and the Wyoming border. When I shot my moose, I hunted 27 days and seen 37 moose. And twice I passed up a record book moose because it was still in velvet and I thought I could still find it. But I've got probably 20 or 30 minutes of video of that moose as I was actually hunting it. And then it ended up I couldn't find it and ended up shooting a small bull with my Ruger 480 revolver. I had tremendous hunt, one of the most enjoyable hunts I ever had, because of all of the 50 something years my wife and I have been married. She went with me 2 times on that hunt, and she seen that large bull both times. And one time actually talked me out of it. She said, "We don't want to go home today." And I'm looking at this bull at about 35 yards in a beaver pond, and it's a record book bull, but it's in velvet, and I passed it up.
That's the way it goes sometimes. So, backing up, when you get back to Idaho, what's the first thing you get into?
As far as
After you left Texas, you have this experience. Your buddies Dub and Hoof, they've kind of taken you under their wing, and you've killed whitetail, and but now you're back in bigger country with a lot of public land. What's kind of the first thing the first hunting that you set out to do with a handgun when you got back?
well, we had already been hunting the Selway country, my brothers and I, and that fall we took the horses, and I don't think I had a mule then. I think I did the following year. But anyway, we packed it back into the Selway country, which is extremely rugged and remote. You have to have usually have to have 2 horses per person. Packed up the Selway River, and I killed a huge bull with my old model flat top 44, Keith cast bullet, and I actually won a rifle where I was working. It was the third largest elk ever taken at that hunt club, and I did it with the 44 flat top. And I can send you a picture of it. I've posted a picture of that bull many times, but there was just elk everywhere, and that's where I told you that a lot of those elk were dying of old age and never seen a person. That country was so rugged and remote before the wolves moved in that you could go back in there, and it was a pretty simple task to get elk, because you could hunt them during the rut in September, and it just took a lot of effort because you couldn't drive into that country. You had to either backpack in, which would be foolish on an elk hunt because it'd be so far to pack one out. So you had to have good horses, good mountain horses, because there was a lot of people who would go in there and have accidents. I seen people kill horses in there. Actually seen the one horse go head over heels right down the mountain and land in the river. And I went down and helped this guy unload the horse, and it eventually got it back up onto the trail, but it was a bad accident.
Wow. One of the things that I think about and with hunting, and this is kind of something that I've developed over the years, is that really to be successful, you just have to be there, right? And I know that sounds simple, but what I mean by that is there's so many people who want to do it. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's always the easy way, but morning hunt, evening hunt, or we're not going to go very far into the backcountry, but it's the hunters who stay out all day, who go far enough into the backcountry where nobody is. They're the ones who usually find success. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely true. You have to pay your dues to be successful, and you see the guys that year after year are successful. It's like a good successful football coach or someone else. They are putting in the time and paying their dues and doing certain things the right way. And in this country, most of these mountain ranges run in a north-south direction, and none of this that I'm telling you is set in stone. Some things are a little bit different, but for the most part, the mountain ranges run north and south, and the heavy timber will be on the north-facing slopes and the east-facing slopes. And so that's where the animals live. They'll come out of that cover and then feed sometimes on the west-facing and the south-facing slopes because they're more open, and that's where the feed's at. But you have to pay attention to the wind, and cold air is heavy air, and so in the mornings it goes downhill, and you have to pay attention to that. A lot of people, I've talked to people that's hunted all their life, and they don't have a inkling of. They have don't pay any attention to the wind and what the wind does, and you're just up against it. If you don't pay attention to the wind in those areas, it'll take your scent for a couple of miles sometimes, right to something like a deer or an elk. Moose, not so much, but elk. I've scared elk from a long ways away when the scent will carry right to them on a good wind, or a bear. I've scared bears from a long ways away when the wind will roll over. But that heavy air will go downhill, and then around, say, 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, when the air starts warming up and gets lighter, then it starts going uphill. And so you have to pay attention to when the air rolls over, I call it, goes from going downhill to uphill. And when you spot game, or if you think a canyon has game in it, don't go up that canyon necessarily. It's better to go into a canyon to the side of it, go up 3/4 of the way, and then come in from a side and hunt it. Because game animals, they bed down about 3/4 of the way up a canyon. Usually is where you'll find them. They'll be about 1/4 of the way down from the top. That's where they like to bed, and you'll come in and you'll run right into them a lot of times. But if you come in from the bottom, and that air has warmed up, it'll take your scent right up to them. Little things like that makes the difference between a successful hunter and a person that zeroes out just time after time and can't understand why.
And that's kind of a good point about also knowing your specific terrain, right? Because what you're talking about is kind of foreign to me, even though, I mean, I live in the hill country of Texas, not mountains by any stretch. And I take it for granted that you can't take the wind for granted. It's gonna switch and change, switch and swirl and change on you all the time, like you said, with the temperature variances and whatnot. But that just shows the importance of, say, I was going to come and hunt in Idaho. I would get some local information from people who know what they're talking about and listen to it, because that's something that I wouldn't have thought about. Now I do try and make sure that I know the wind, but what you're talking about, the canyons and going in from the side, that's key knowledge that's variable depending on where you hunt, right?
Yeah, these canyons are just like chimneys, and like I say, that cold, heavy air in the morning is going right down, and early in the morning, that's where you'll usually find, especially elk. They'll be in the bottom of those canyons, down on those beaver ponds and stuff, feeding. I've killed lots of elk. I've killed 26 elk. You'll find them right down on those beaver ponds and feeding, and the scent from that heavy air all around them is going right to them. And then right at daylight, they'll start drifting back up into those canyons and draws to bed down. And then later in the day, usually I'm using 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning as a time frame, but usually 9 or 10 o'clock, the wind will roll over, get lighter, and then those air currents will start flowing uphill and taking your scent right to them. If you go into the bottom of one of those canyons, that chimney effect will take your scent right up those canyons to them. So if you think there's game in that canyon, you can't go in it. You're just committing suicide. You've got to go up a side canyon, like I say, go up about 3/4 of the way and find a little pocket that'll allow you to drop over unseen and go in, and you'll probably wander right into them where you can maybe glass, or I take a slingshot with me in my backpack. I always have it with me. Used to call them a flipper crotch when I was a kid, but take that slingshot wrist rocket, whatever you want to call it. And I used to use a little mold that I'd cast lead anymore, but lead's a little more expensive. So now I just use a rock or whatever. Marbles will work. And if you get into a spot that looks like a good bedding area, you can a lot of times, if you're pretty handy with that, you can shoot those marbles or lead balls, whatever you're using, rocks. If, and you can actually work those animals right out of that pocket, right into the open, or right up to you. And I've done it several times. My mother always was shooting grouse when she'd ride the horse in there with us, but she liked to shoot grouse with them, so we didn't have to use a gun. But a slingshot is a real good tool to make an animal stand up and give you a shot.
Wow, that's an interesting tip. Well, okay, I have a question. So, have you ever run into an experience, and I know you've hunted in a lot of different places. Have you ever run into an experience where your assumptions got you in trouble? And what I mean by that is, like, say you're chasing elk in one part of the country, and then you go somewhere else and you chase elk, and they don't act the same, or there's something about the terrain that makes them like something there that they don't like where you're used to hunting them. And so you think about all these things that you just usually take for granted when you're hunting that don't apply with this new situation. Have you ever run into that?
Well, yeah, that elk are pretty smart. It's I
Right.
don't know, they're a pretty intelligent animal, and they can get into some unusual patterns that you can run into. I actually haven't hunted elk in any other state
Mm.
other than Idaho. I've been into them a lot in Montana and a little bit in Wyoming, but I've never actually hunted them. But I've heard people talk about what you're referring to, but I actually haven't put it to use because I haven't hunted out of
Yeah,
state
well,
for elk.
okay. Well, it doesn't have to be elk. I'm just talking about in a hunting situation in general, something that in your home territory you take for granted, but when you're hunting somewhere else, it's changed. It could be it could be the wind is different, or the animals behave different with the wind, or something that's been surprising to you.
Uh, no, not that I can think of. I can't. I guess because other than Texas, I've never really hunted any place that wasn't public land.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's all been public, and so just about the same rules would apply as far as the hunting conditions. I
Gotcha.
can't I can't offhand, Ryan, think of any place that's threw me a curveball. Uh,
One of the things that I've heard of, I have yet to go, but somebody was telling me the other day that in Africa the animals sleep at night and eat during the day, and that it was kind of counterintuitive to him that that you're not as concerned as you are here with the more crepuscular activity of the animals in the dawn and evening time. And so that's kind of the thing I was thinking about. It's just things that you go to a new spot and you think, wow, these animals are so foreign. This situation is so foreign to what I'm used to hunting.
yeah, I don't know. I remember reading time about a guy talking about cloudy weather, referring to Africa.
Hmm.
He said if it was cloudy, that seemed to make the animals react different. I can't remember just exactly what he was saying, but I think he was saying that they were harder to find if it was just cloudy, and that kind of puzzled me a little bit. I wish I could remember a little bit more specific about what he said, but he talked like being a cloudy day or overcast day or something.
Interesting. Besides,
Go ahead.
besides chasing whitetails in Texas and elk and mule deer and moose in your home state, where else have I know you've been to Alaska, correct?
Yes.
And what was that trip? When was that trip, and what were you hunting?
I a friend of mine, my dentist, and I miss him terribly. We hunted in '81. We had a bush pilot fly us 150 miles west of Anchorage and drop us on the Kuskokwim River, and we were there for 17 days, living out of our backpacks. and I shot two caribou and three bears.
Hmm.
And in Alaska, you can interchange tags if the price is equal or less. And so I didn't shoot a moose on that trip. And so I used it on another bear. I could have shot moose, but I kept thinking I'd see one closer to camp and wouldn't have to backpack moose meat for 3 days, and
Right.
it didn't work out. But seen a lot of game, seen a lot of caribou, a lot of bears. There was bears in every drainage we went up. If as long as it had a little fresh water in it, there was bears, and just you were constantly stepping on wild blueberries. It was
Mm-hmm.
just I was just sick of blueberries. By the time I got home, I didn't eat them for 5 years. It was just we just were eating blueberries all day long. We'd stop and pick a handful and eating freeze dried food. And then the first day we could legally hunt, I killed my first caribou, and so we had fresh caribou meat to eat. That was really good. And we let it cool out good the first day, and then I would wrap my sleeping bag around it to keep it cold behind an old trapper's cabin
Hmm.
that was off on the mainland. We were camped out on a gravel bar. That's where we kept our tents,
Uh-huh.
so that it would stay away from the meat and stay away. I seen a grizzly bear the first morning, really close, real way closer than I wanted him to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I stepped out of my sleeping bag to do my morning deed that everybody does, and looked up, and my gun was in the tent, and there's a grizzly bear about 40 yards away walking right down the sandbar.
Oof.
And I think separating the two of us was a little bit of water, and I just froze. And if he seen me, he didn't react, but I just was standing still.
Man.
He
Wow.
could have been to me in 3 seconds.
Wow.
He
What
was a huge bear.
what kind of gun were you using on that hunt?
On that hunt in '81, I had a 340 Weatherby. I didn't take a handgun because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if I'd ever get back to Alaska, and I wanted to be successful. And they say that was 50 years ago, and they're close to it. And we both took 340 Weatherby's, my dentist and I, so
You share ammo. Yeah.
yeah, if we needed to.
Oh, that's an
But
interesting point then. Was there a point in your hunting career when you went handgun only, or is that
yes,
important?
yeah. Actually, quite a long time ago, about 25 years ago or so. I remember exactly, but uh, I can remember doing it. I shot a deer out here east of town with a 257 Ackley rifle, and that day I came home and started selling off rifles and buying more handguns. But it was around 25 years ago. I just that day was the end of it.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
It just got boring. It just got too easy. The success was just, I don't know, I was ruining it for myself. There was so much game. I live in a spot where there's game everywhere, and I was just taking the fun out of it, and it just wasn't there. It was like scoring a touchdown every play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I, I just had to put the excitement back into it or walk away from it, and it's something I've done all my life, so I wasn't going to walk away from it. So I had to do something to put the thrill back into the
That
game.
I love that.
And
I can just imagine, like that's it. We're moving out.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can sell my
I came
rifles.
that day and started getting rid of guns.
Wow.
I had several bigger number ones and 364s and custom guns, and that was it.
I get it. I get it. So you've been to Africa. When did you go to Africa? And were you handgun hunting in Africa?
Yes, both hunts. My first time to Africa was in 2001. and I was invited by Fred Smith from Bullberry Barrel Works.
Mm-hmm.
Over the time, I had 41 of different barrels of Fred's,
Wow.
and just about everything. Most of them were Wildcats, improved barrels. I like then instead of a 730 waters, I had 730 improves.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a 730 waters at one time. But I had a lot of improved cases. I liked blown out shoulder or bonded to the chamber walls and less case head thrust on the standing breech. I just liked the improved cases. The 223 actually improved. The 257 actually improved. My very favorite was the 250 improved. The 250 Savage improved.
Mm-hmm.
That so many big deer with that, and I can send you pictures of them. I made some long shots, and my favorite bullet was the 85 grain nostril ballistic tip. That's a very tough, very good game bullet
Mm-hmm.
that holds together really well.
Was that on a? Can you put that on a contender frame, or was that an encore frame?
It was an encore.
Yeah.
It was an encore.
Yeah.
But I'm
That is one of the ones. As far as the improved goes, that's one of the ones that actually does a lot of good improvement. You know, and when I was building rifles, I did several of those. Kind of one of those ones that punches above its weight. Well, how long was the barrel on that gun?
most of them I would get. I'd have Fred turn them to 15 inches. But I took a 6.5 284 to Africa and a 338 284 to Africa, and then I took a 475 line ball Freedom Arms. Those were the three guns I took. But where Fred had invited me to Africa, I was pretty much obligated to take his guns, of course, and I enjoyed that very much. And then I shot those for several years, but I was doing the same thing kind of with the specialty pistols as I was doing with the rifles that just don't take this wrong. I don't mean to, I was getting pretty good with them. I was working at it almost every day, and I was making some pretty impressive shots, but I don't mean to be bragging about it, but I was almost taking myself out of that sport. So
Well, Dick, it's not bragging if you can do it, right?
well, I don't mean to come across as saying it, but
Oh, trust
living
me.
where I was
Trust me, you don't. You don't. And actually,
I,
what you're saying is that if you dedicate yourself to practicing at something, you can get very good at it, which I heartily endorse.
I wrote an article for Varmint Hunter magazine a few years ago, and I had I don't remember if it was 5 or 8 different barrels that I had shot groups under a tenth of an inch at 50 yards.
Wow.
Under a tenth of an inch. That's how good they were. And they're just phenomenal barrels. But anybody's capable of doing that. The barrels were that good. Just good optics and get them with the right rest and stuff. And I was shooting rock chucks and squirrels and badgers. I'd go almost every day because like within just 5 or 10 minutes I was hunting in any direction. So, but deer, elk, bear, antelope, anything. It was just I made some pretty impressive shots.
So what was Africa like the first time in '01?
Africa, we went to a really nice place. It wasn't a real big place. He had 6 or 7,000 acres or something, which is you never see a fence in a place like that. They all were wild, really wild. I was stunned. They were so goosey, but a lot of game. And I shot 3 warthogs. I shot wildebeest. I shot impala. We got between us. We got I don't know 9 or 10 animals. Can't remember. Kudu, zebra. Fred shot a world's record water buck. And we just had a wonderful time, and the food was amazing. It couldn't have been any better. Well, I guess it could have been because the second hunt that we just went on, I should have my animals back any day now. We went to an even better place, and I don't know how that's even possible. But I shot 5 animals, basically with 6 shots. They were having me put a finisher in all of them, just as kind of a just because thing of safety. But basically, it was 5 animals with 6 shots, and that was an Inyala antelope, a kudu, a zebra, a gemsbuck, and a Cape buffalo. And I used a Ruger 45 Bisley, shooting 325 grain cast on the Cape buffalo. Knocked it down with the first shot. Broke the one shoulder and it exited. The buffalo stood back up, but it was real wobbly. It was dead on its feet. But that's one of them where you don't take a chance.
Right.
The PA shoot it again, and I'm waiting for it to turn because it's got his butt towards me. And it turns on a slight angle. I take a real steep angle shot with my second cast bullet, and I go through the rib cage. I get the vitals, and the bullet hits the offside shoulder and stays in it and knocks it down on all fours. It goes straight down on all fours, and then it just slowly rolls over on its side. And the PH, he's the owner of the place, and he owns hundreds of thousands of acres. He walks up to me, big jovial guy, great big South African guy. He's an attorney by practice, but walks up to me and he says, "Dick, you are so much fun." And he grabs me by the shoulders and he gives me a kiss on the cheek.
That's great.
Tells me, give it another between the shoulder blades. A lot of people get killed by dead Cape buffalo.
Right.
Give it a shot right in the shoulder blades,
Yeah.
and so I do. And but it was already dead.
Wow.
But,
That is hilarious.
that second shot, the real steep angled shot through all of those rib cage and almost, I'd say, at least 3/4 length through that buffalo, Ryan. When those skinners dug that bullet out and washed it off and gave it back to me, I weighed it back when I got home. That bullet was a 308 grain water quenched bullet that I'd cast. It weighed 308 when I fired it, and it weighed 308 when they gave it back to me when I got home. I just don't know how it was even possible, but it just kind of riveted the nose over a little bit. But I've showed that picture on the forum, and I pulled a couple other bullets out of the cases just to be sure, because I just didn't see how that was possible. They weighed 308, and that's what that bullet. I still have it. I've got pictures of it. I'll send you one.
That's really neat. That's interesting to hear that, and it's cool that you still have that bullet. Was that a powder coated bullet?
Yeah, it was a powder coated bullet. It's still blue, and but it just kind of riveted the nose over a little bit. The nose is about 50 caliber, maybe. Just kind of flattened it over a little bit, going through all of that buffalo, but it's just stunned me. I still, I still can't hardly believe it. But most of all of the bullets I had, the one bullet stayed in the zebra. It was the 282 grain with a small hollow point in it, and but the other bullets, I used the same 282 hollow point on the kudu. It was a longer shot. It was about 80 something yards, I think. That bullet passed through and broke both shoulders and dropped it right in its tracks. It never moved. Same thing on my gemsbuck with the Freedom Arms and a 250 grain bullet in the 41 Magnum Freedom Arms. Dropped it in its tracks. That high shoulder shot is so deadly. When you break both shoulders like that, they just drop. Doesn't necessarily kill them right instantly, but they're done. They're down. They can't move. And I just walk over there and give it a finisher. So same thing with the Inyala. Shot it with the 45. Uh, Gave it a second shot when I walked over there.
I know that you're a big fan of the 41 Magnum, and
I love it.
yeah, and the more I get to know other handgun hunters, and this is my first year hunting with my 41 Magnum. I'm curious because I feel like it's an underappreciated round. Obviously, that's kind of the consensus that the 41 fans have. What what are some of the things that you've hunted with the 41 that might disprove the myths about its efficiency?
Well, the thing that people don't understand, for 50 years I've used that mostly with a 230 grain Keith bullet, and that bullet came out of a Seiko mold that I've had for years and years and years. But I've killed everything with it: bears, elk, antelope. Uh, I'm guessing at least 40 deer, but that's just a guess, and I don't keep very good records. I've never been a records type guy. I've got thousands of pictures, but I don't really keep records. Some of the numbers I can keep in my head, but uh, you take a 250 grain bullet in a 41 and a 250 grain bullet in a 44 and a 250 grain bullet in a 45, and you try to show me the difference. You can't,
Hmm.
because I I never recover those bullets. They always go clear through, even on the big elk. Uh, a few years ago, Jeff Hoover and some other guys were here, and we were shooting. I was shooting my 41, and I was shooting a wide flat nose 41. That 250 grain wide flat nose uh, has a wider me plat than the Keith 44 bullet.
Hmm.
You look at them side by side, and you'd think that the 41 bullet was actually the 44, because the me plat was wider than the famous 44 Keith bullet. And it's every bit as good a killer, if not better, than the 429, 421 Keith bullet that's been used all over the world. It's been used on elephants.
Mm-hmm.
And my 41 bullet with a wide flat nose has a wider me plat than the 44. So you can say all you want about paper ballistics, but in the field, the 41 in a 250 grain bullet is will do anything that the 44 bullet will do, or the 45 with a 250 grain bullet. You can't show me any difference. I've killed too many animals with all three, and I use all three all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing cartridge.
I agree, and I really have been enjoying mine. As we talked last time, I'm still working on delving into the cast bullet side of things, and most of the stuff that I hunt here, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. However, it is fascinating to me. I'm always kind of one of the things that I live my life by. One of the two mottos that I live my life by is to murder all sacred cows. And just
Uh-huh.
to, I love busting convention. I love challenging things. That's just the only reason that you do it is because that's just the way you do it. And the 41, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of handgun hunters. That's kind of one of the things that we really like. And the 41 is one of those cartridges that just helps you do that even more.
Yeah, it will most of the time with the right bullet, the 41 will out penetrate the 44, the 45. Uh, Shoots a little flatter, but I put a lot of don't pay a lot of attention to trajectory with a revolver. We're talking handguns here, and so
Hmm.
trajectory doesn't make a big difference. Recoil doesn't make a big difference, but the edge there does go to the 41 again, because the gun is it's a little bit heavier because of a
Hmm.
little smaller holes in the chamber and things like that. But it, there's no downside to a 41 Magnum, but there is an upside. It's just it seems to, I don't know why, to me seems like it kills a little quicker. The recoil is down. You take factory ammo, I think there's like 16 foot-pounds of recoil to a 44 and about 12 pounds of recoil to a 41.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair amount. You take 25% or so, something like that. And I shoot, I've gone more and more to the cast hollow point since powder coatings came along and allowed me to shoot these bullets softer and faster and get away with it without leading.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here looking at two different bullets right here on the table as we're talking. And the other night when I was hunting those deer, I was using my Freedom Arms and 212 grain cast hollow point, and I can run that bullet really fast out of that 10-inch Freedom Arms and get away with it and shoot that bullet. I don't know what the hardest is. I'm just going to guess and say a 9 or so,
Mm-hmm.
but it holds together really well. And I put 5 on a steel plate at 100 yards the other day that I could cover with the palm of my hand real easy. And it's just amazingly accurate and a great bullet.
So when you're hunting with the 41, do you put a range limitation on yourself? I mean, obviously within reason, but I'm just saying, like, is there a limit with which you say, like, this is a good blank range cartridge?
Well, with that Freedom Arms and that light bullet, under good conditions, and what I mean shooting off the sticks or something where I'm solid on a deer with that lightweight bullet, I'm comfortable to 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go. I don't ever look for a long shot.
Right.
I always try
And it
try
and
to
it
make.
and it should be said that I think without exception, probably every handgun a handgun hunter uses is capable of killing at a lot further range than the shooter is able to shoot.
Yes, and I always carry two guns. I always carry an iron-sighted belt gun, and then sometimes in the shoulder holster I'll have the scoped gun. Sometimes it'll be sticking out of my backpack where I can just reach over my shoulder and pull it out of the backpack.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll have a longer scoped gun, either one of the 44 Bisleys or one of the other scoped guns. The 357 Maximum goes with me probably the most because I have such confidence in the 357 Maximum. I don't think there's a better deer cartridge or antelope cartridge anywhere than a 357 Maximum revolver.
That's
With
interesting.
a 100 hollow point, I think it's the supreme caliber.
You have that in a revolver?
Yeah, I have a 10.5 Ruger, and I've killed I don't know how many deer, and I think I've got 6 antelope with it.
What do you
I killed one.
go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say I killed one there with that 327 8-shot Black Hawk also,
Mm-hmm.
with that 100 and about 140 grain. I call it the Terminator bullet, but that's a long shank hollow point, 70 something, 74 yards I think with that. Just those big hollow points with that powder coating on them, they're tough bullets. They just work great.
So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned scopes and whatnot. What kind of optics do you like to use? I mean, I assume like everybody over the age of 40, it's harder to see iron sights than it used to be. So what kind of sighting systems do you like to have on your guns?
Well, I've almost always used iron sights. For, most everything that I've shot has
Mm-hmm.
been iron sights, but I do have the Maximum is scoped now. It wasn't before. I killed I don't know how many deer and one or two of the antelope with iron sights, but it's scoped now. It's got one of those no drill. I don't know if it's Weaver or who makes the
Oh,
no
Weigand,
drill.
isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Big Wigan.
Mm-hmm.
It's got those mounts on it. I think that's the one. And then I've got one of those dual cylinder Buckeye 3220, and then it's got the 32 H&R mag cylinder. I've used that. I think it's got one of those no drill mounts on it also. But I've got a scoped 10-inch 44, and then the Freedom Arms 41 Magnum. It's scoped.
Do you like fixed or variable scopes?
Uh, I like the 3 to 12 Burris a lot. On if I'm shooting like varmints and stuff on the single shots, I've always preferred that 3 to 12. Another good one is a 2 to 7 Burris adjustable scope.
Yeah, it's classic.
But yeah, and then on some of the bigger kickers, I just like a straight 4-power loophole. Actually, right now, that's what I've got on the Freedom Arms. I had a 2.5 to 8 loophole on it, and I switched it off last year for some reason. It's got a 4-power loophole. It's one of those. I sent it back and had the premier reticles, put a finer reticle in there, and that works real good.
You've brought a couple of questions to mind. So, are you blessed with unnaturally good vision to be able to use iron sights at your age?
I was for a long time. My eyesight was really, really good when I was shooting. I shot USPSA competition revolver for many, many years, and then I started having a lot of eyesight problems. And then about a year ago or a year and a half ago or something, I had cataract surgery, and I was scared to death that it wasn't going to help me, because I had for a year or two, even though I was shooting right-handed, I was crossing over and using my left eye because my right eye was so bad. I was either using scopes or being stubborn and switching over and using my left eye. That's having so much trouble. But after I had that cataract surgery, they did one eye 1 week, and then the next week they did the other eye. And when I went in the second week to get the other eye done, the one eye that they had fixed the week before was already 20/20.
Wow.
And I was just tickled to death. And now I can see my sights really good. I'm using Furman Garza front sights, and I always have him narrow to a 1/10 of an inch. I've had that done for probably 40 years. Either my son's a gunsmith. I've had him narrow just the factory sights to a 1/10 of an inch, or the last several years, Furman has made custom sights for me. They're great sights. They're worth the money.
Oh yeah.
And I've got them on almost every gun. And then recently I've been using these rear sights that him and Ronnie Wells are making, and using that along with Furman's front sights, and they've just made all the difference in the world. And I like a revolver with iron sights, so I carry both, and I'm still using them a lot. But there's times when there's a shot out there that maybe because of lighting conditions, or a deer or an elk is standing in timber or in cover, where I can't see it good enough with iron sights, that I pull out that other gun, either out of the shoulder holster, or I'll have it sticking out of my backpack, where I can just reach back there and pull it out real quick. And a lot of times I'll go prone off my backpack. I kill a lot of game off my backpack. I have a little small piece of leather that I pull out of that backpack that I keep right in the top, and I throw that over my backpack real quick so that I don't burn it. And I just flop that thick piece of leather. It's very small, just about 8 inches or so I don't get that cylinder burn. But I shoot a lot of animals prone if I can't set up the sticks or whatever. But I always have two ways of shooting off of something, either the backpack and the sticks, or when I shot that cow elk at 184 yards a few years ago, I shot it with iron sights in heavy snow, and I was using my walking stick, and I ran my wrist through that leather thong on the stick, and then stuck it in the snow, and then the stick was laying against my left thigh. So it was real solid because I had my wrist through that swing. And my buddy that was sitting beside me, he was shooting her with the rangefinder. She was coming down a ridge, and he was giving me the readings. And when she stopped at 184 yards, he called it out, 184 yards, and she wasn't going to come any closer. But she showed up so good in that white snow. We were standing in 18 inches of snow. And I shoot an old model 45 Ruger with a 260 grain Keith bullet. And I knew I could make that shot. I've done it over and over and over all my life. And I double lunged her and just blood everywhere. And she run right down towards our four-wheelers. We was driving up through that snow. And piled up 30 yards from our four-wheelers.
Wow. Okay, so then I actually did a podcast with Furman, and fantastic guy, and loved his advice. It's one of the favorites of, and I can send people, and he's such a nice guy. He's always wanting to help people out. And I'm actually looking at the front sight and a rear sight that I got from him and Ronnie to put on my Ruger 357 Bisley. But I'm curious to hear from you, your tips and tricks about being good with iron sights.
Well, what I do with iron sights is years ago when I was still in the service, just as I was getting out and Skeeter Skelton was starting to write, he was talking about narrowing that front sight to 1/10 of an inch. And I started doing it because they come factory at 125, and that's too thick for most guys. Maybe not for everybody, but I would start having them. I'd go over to Dodge City, Texas, to an old gunsmith friend of mine, and he narrowed 1 or 2 to 1/10 of an inch. And then I started taking fingernail polish, and I would come down about, how they're cross-checkered. I would come down about 2 threads on that cross-checkering, and I would paint it white with fingernail polish. And I'd let it dry, and then I would take the brightest color I could find. If it was pink or orange, I always like to use orange if I can. And I would paint over that white that had dried, and I'd usually come about 2 threads is all, and paint it bright orange. And that gives you 2 sighting distances. You use the top of the sight as your regular sighting distance and sight in at, say, for hunting, you're better off to sight in, say, out here 50 yards and sight that in. Then go to the bottom of that color that you just sighted down 2 threads and shoot and see where that's sighted in. And you actually got 2 sights now. You got your regular sight where you're level with your rear sight and the top of that front sight, and say you're dead on at 50 yards. And see where the bottom of that paint is, and you're going to have to use a 6 o'clock hold now so that you can see that animal. You can't hold and shoot it and see where it's zeroed. You're going to have to back up, and you'll have to move and see. And it's probably going to be somewhere around 100 yards, might be even a little bit more. And you might have to take a razor blade and take some of that paint off, or you might have to add to it. You'll have to find out where you're comfortable. But it's like the old Elmer Keith used to use those gold bars, He'd have 2 gold bars in there. And it's the same concept. But I had my gunsmith son put a gold bar in one of mine, but it's back when my eyes wasn't very good, and I actually couldn't see it very good. I had to go back to the paint. And I'm still using the paint, but I have that one sight with real gold in there. He was using gold that he was using for engraving on some of his high-end rifles. But I couldn't see it very good before I had this cataract surgery.
Interesting.
So
when you shoot, I was just going to ask, just to clarify. So when you shoot, so you're talking, you have a front sight with a few steps down the stripes, the check, not the checkering, but the I cannot remember what you call that. The serrations. That's the word I'm looking for. You go
Yes, yes.
a few down the serrations, and you have that orange. Like you paint white, and then you paint over it with orange. Correct, so you can see it even brighter.
Yeah. See, what happens is if you don't use the white underneath, if you
Right.
just use nothing but, it's going to look black
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
shadow. So you want to use white underneath it to make that orange kind of jump out at you.
Understood. And so then I remember seeing the gold bars. So when you're holding just using the sight as it is, using the top of the sight, are you holding dead center, or are you a 6 o'clock guy, or where do you hold?
With the top one, you'll hold dead center. You'll
Okay.
want to hold it right on the hit. You, if you want to hold dead center on the deer, hold heart and lungs,
Mm-hmm.
you'll hold everything so that you can see that deer. But then when you go to the second side, the bottom of that color, you're going to have to hold at 6 o'clock so that the deer looks like it's sitting on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
or it won't work. And so you're going to have to fool with the paint. You may have to come down a little more depending on caliber and velocity, or you may have to take a razor blade and scrape some of it off. You may have to back up, but find out where that's zero. Because let's say you've got a deer at 100 yards, and you shoot over it. Well, that tells you that the deer, it's either farther away or it's closer. So if you get two shots, you're going to hit it with the second one. If you're
Yeah.
in the con, you know the distance of the deer now with the second shot,
Mm-hmm.
because you either went over or under, because you know where that paint is zeroed for.
Right. And are you lining? So you take the bottom line of that paint and line it up with the top of your rear sight, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay. That makes sense.
and then
Yeah. Just like the old
hold it at six
gold
o'clock.
bars.
Yeah, hold it at 6 o'clock so that you can see that animal and and break the shot. And that's what I did on that elk. And I knew I was going to hit that elk before I ever made the shot, because
Mm-hmm.
I've made that so many times. And the thing was, that elk was standing out in that snow, and it just looked like a barn door.
Right.
And
Yeah.
with my left wrist to that leather sling and holding on to that gun with both hands, I was dead steady. I mean,
Yeah.
from shooting silhouette and competition all my life, that was not a difficult shot. If that elk would have been 50 yards and standing in the brush, I might not have been able to make it, might not even have taken it.
Mm. Well, I always say shooting iron sights is like driving a manual transmission. It's kind of a lost skill, but an important one.
Yeah, yeah. I love iron sights and still use them all the time, but there's times you can't take even a close shot if you have a bad background or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. uh, Not an ethical shot. And I always try to get the best shot I can. I don't ever try to take a tough shot.
So I wanted to ask you, just starting to wrap up here, your is there anything? What are you looking forward to hunting next? Is there anything that's on your list that you either haven't done or are looking forward to doing again, or want a certain representative of a species?
Well, I'm still not giving up on Africa. I'm almost 79 years old. I will be in the spring, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't shoot a sable. Uh, but a sable was on my list. I had my choice.
Mm-hmm.
It was either I could shoot a sable or a kudu for the same price. And sable are normally very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
A kudu is quite expensive, but I wanted the kudu. It's just been one of those childhood dreams all my life, and to take one with a handgun. And I shot a great kudu with that 45. I made a long shot, made a great shot. It was two big bulls, and they were just coming out of the brush, and he whispers to me, "You gotta hurry." He said, "Shoot the one in the back." And I broke both shoulders and dropped it down. And I was like a little kid. I just had to gather myself. It's just one of those things that just came together all at once. And I went over there and I was just made a perfect shot on it. But but we had just drove past a whole bunch of sable 2 or 3 times in the last couple hours. I should have shot the sable and then paid the extra money and got a kudu. It would have been much, I wouldn't have had to pay that much difference, and I'd got both. Uh, but now I may have to go back. But this thing that's coming up with this group of guys that's going over, it's tearing my heart
Uh,
out.
oh, you mean the HHI guys that are going in
I'm not signed up yet. I'm Mike texting me almost every day,
2025?
and I don't know at this point. But I really wanted a sable. Larry got a nice one. My buddy that was with me.
hmm
Anyway,
Well, I hope you do. I
that
hope you do, Dick. There's not a more deserving person.
I would like to do it, but that's the one that's on my mind right now. I've done about everything else. I've got everything here pretty much from moose and lion. I shot my lion uh, out of a tree at 5 feet. It was 350 on the Keith bullet. And that was a dumb thing to do. Probably one of the two dumbest things I've ever done. That thing could have got me so fast, but I was young and dumb, and it happened. But
Yeah.
like without getting hurt, but it was a dumb thing to do. I could have leaned out and touched that thing with my muzzle. I believe if I'd have leaned out far enough, I actually believe I could have touched it. But
So, did you climb up in a tree with a lion?
yes, I actually climbed up there about 3 different times. We were trading off. Me and my taxidermist that passed away about 5 years ago, old high school buddy. Uh, we both climbed up at the same time. And the lion just went crazy, and so we knew it was going to attack us. So one of us would go down and stand by the fire in the snow, and the other guy would go up and take pictures for a while. It was below zero, and then we'd trade off. The other guy would go up, and the other guy would go back down and stand by the fire and the dogs and warm up. And finally, we needed to get off the mountain because we were on snowshoes and long way to go to the truck. And so I went up with, I had a 8 3/8 Model 27 Smith nickel, and I went up and I was in one tree and the cat was in the other, and my intention was to shoot it single action and then quickly give it another one double action. That was my intention. And when I shot that thing, the first shot, I double lunged it. It hit the ground before I could even pull the trigger. Those cats are so fast. It was just a blur, and that thing could have jumped me so quick. But
Wow.
I pulled the trigger single action and it was gone. It hit the snow and made one giant lunge in the air. We had the dogs tied up. You always tie up the dogs so
hmm
cat won't pull them. But it made one giant lunge in the air and just went limp in the air. It was dead and just folded up and plowed in the snow. But I didn't even get a chance to pull the trigger double action, and it was hit the ground. That's how
Wow.
fast it was.
Man. Well,
And
public.
I just didn't
Jeez.
I was a young fella in my late 20s, and
That's
it,
that's funny. Wow. I mean, funny is an amazing and public service announcement. Don't climb trees with mountain lions.
yeah, it was a dumb thing to do. We chased it for 11 hours on snowshoe. We
Whoa.
were just we had ice from sweat. The ice would run down our sweat would run down our jacket in the front and freeze. We had icicles from our chin clear down halfway down our jackets
Wow.
froze solid. It was a terrible day, but a fun day.
Yeah. It sounds like something only somebody in their 20s could do.
Yeah, it was unreal. I was breaking through the snow. I was heavier. Frank could go on top
hmm
with his snowshoes. He was lighter, but I was breaking through. So it was
Oof. That's work.
a memorable. It was something.
Wow.
We'd
Okay.
tree it and
Man, that's wild. Okay, so last question, something I'm always curious about because I'm a food lover. What is your favorite game meat and way to prepare it?
My favorite game meat is just probably elk back straps, and I just like to cut them fairly thick and medium rare. Uh, just in a cast iron skillet with a little onion, little mushroom, or whatever, and I just don't think you can beat it. Uh, when we're not backcountry, we we eat those back straps usually as soon as we killed them. Same way with caribou or whatever. I didn't have a Dutch oven with me; it's too heavy in Alaska, flying in out of a bush plane and living up in your backpack. But just good in a skillet. But any wild meat is amazing. Just don't overcook it. If you overcook it, this it dries out. There's not much fat. But
you're a man after my own heart, and the more I talk to you, the more I feel simpatico, because that is pretty much the way I eat deer meat, is cast iron skillet, simply seasoned, cooking it rare, medium rare, and enjoying it that way. And my girls eat it the same way, and that's one of my favorite things about hunting, is being able to feed my family.
Yeah, you can't beat it. You just can't beat it. It's amazing meat. It's not gamey. I love it, and I hope I shoot one here in the next few days. It closes Tuesday, and I'm hoping to run up to Montana here with my buddies. My one buddy has a Mexican restaurant here, and then his brother has a taco bus up in Montana, and he knows all those ranchers, and we go up there and shoot those fat white-tailed does on those river bottoms, and it doesn't even taste like venison. It's just so amazing. Those deer are in great shape. They're born on those river bottoms and they die there. They never go in the mountain. And I usually shoot one day with one caliber and one the next day with another caliber. And I've killed dozens of them up there. I usually shoot two, and they're fatter than I am, and they're just in wonderful shape. And there are lots of them.
That's fantastic. Well, Dick, once again, thanks so much for doing this with me. You're a fascinating gentleman. Love that you just share all your information and experience with us handgun hunters. And I know down the road we'll probably do another. Well, after you get your sable, we'll definitely have to talk about that story. But I really appreciate you doing this with me.
Brian, it's great to talk to you. Two of my kids were born in Texas, and it's my second home. I love the people down there, friendly people. I got a lot of friends in Texas, and I miss it.
Well, we'd love for you to come for a visit, so be sure to hit me up if you do.
I'll do that. I like Fredericksburg.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate talking to you. Thanks.
Another good one. I know I always say that, but it's a good one. Dick is a fantastic gentleman. I say the same thing about a lot of guys, but that's true, because a lot of the people that we interview, guys and gals, in the handgun hunting community are just fantastically kind, generous people. Dick is no exception, and I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. He really surprised me with that story about his mountain lion and being so close to it, but that's the kind of experience you gain having hunted for 50 years or more. And I really do hope that I get to hunt with Dick someday, and just loved talking with him. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you again next time on the Short Gun Sportsman. Thank you. This podcast is produced by Handgun Hunters International. HHI is the only organization dedicated solely to supporting and growing the sport of handgun hunting. Membership gets you access to our great, well-moderated forum where friendly handgun hunters of all experience levels share stories and information from folks that have actual experience in our sport. We also host giveaways to our members of guns, gear, and ammo every month, and each prize is worth several times what membership costs. In addition to this podcast, we publish a free digital magazine, The Six Gunner, which is written exclusively by HHI members. If you are a handgun hunter or support handgun hunting in any way, you need to be a member of HHI. Join today at handgunhuntersinternational.com. Again, if you have any questions on how to get started in handgun hunting, please reach out to me at ryan@handgunhuntersinternational.com. If you think we deserve it, please leave us a 5-star review and don't forget to follow Handgun Hunters International on social media at Handgun Hunters INT. God bless and good hunting.